Good morning, everybody. We're going to do another audio check. Let me know if you can hear me. I know several of you were able to hear me before, but I want to make sure you can still hear me. Excellent. So right now, we've got 30 some odd folks. Enjoy it. Look around because this is the only time we're going to have this many people at one time in the classroom. I know it's 8 o'clock. It's a strong start, but hopefully we'll get it together and we'll be all right for the whole semester. We'll typically start a couple minutes like 8:03, 8:05 just to give a little bit of grace. But welcome. My name is Dr. Leah Hefner and this is Chem 103, Section 5. If you're somehow here in error, now you know. We're going to do the course overview and then we're going to jump right into some material. So there was a lecture video posted in Blackboard, well, a link to a lecture video. If you haven't had a chance to watch it, that's okay. Don't worry about it. But in the future, just try to watch it beforehand. I know as the semester progresses, that may be less and less of a possibility. Also, just so you know, I record these live lectures. But if you use your microphone or you say something in the chat, I will address your question and you'll hear that part, but you will not be featured in the video. So don't be afraid to use your microphone to ask a question. That will not be recorded. I post everything to YouTube. I put the links onto Blackboard, and I'll talk about that when we talk about Blackboard. But it will pretty much sound like I'm having a conversation with myself, and I will address questions and things like that, but I'm not going to be shouting y'all out. So don't worry about, being vocal in class. Any questions about that? Because I'm currently recording. And I like feedback. So if you don't have any questions, you can say no, nah, I'm good. And you can put all that in the chat. Excellent. Thank you. So welcome back. Welcome if this is your first semester, maybe you transferred. I'll first tell you a little bit about me. So you just hear this voice, right? And I probably won't use my camera because I can't do the camera and share a PowerPoint presentation. So you'll just have to use your creative minds to think about it. No. Okay. So here's a little bit about me. One, I'm crazy. I apologize. I have a big family. I have mommy brain. Don't really have a whole lot of shame in terms of just being me. So I apologize. Or I don't. I'm from New Jersey. Born and raised. Went to school in Pennsylvania for undergrad. And I majored in biochemistry. Then I went to the University of Michigan for my PhD, also in biochemistry. Still very much a big U of M fan, so go blue. Love A&T, don't get me wrong, but still a very big Michigan fan. Then I came here. I started at UNC Chapel Hill and I did a postdoc there. Then I took some time off to be mommy. And then I came back, started teaching at A&T. So that's just my little progression through life. So you know a little bit more about me. You'll get to know more as we go on. I share, hopefully not too much. Now the part that you guys are probably actually interested in, the course overview. So by show of hands, or you can say in the chat, how many of you have taken chemistry in high school or you've taken chemistry in undergrad? Just by show of hands, or you can say me. Okay. So a lot of us have taken chemistry. And how do we feel about that? You can lower your hand. How was chemistry for you? Was it like, meh, I liked it, it hated me, I hated it right back? You can be honest. Okay. So, Unfortunately, chemistry is hard, but it's not hard just, in the abstract. It's hard because it takes a lot of time and effort. It's also made more difficult because sometimes instructors are trash. I'm just going to be real. Sometimes we don't teach it well. So hopefully we can get over that hurdle of your bad experience and we can make it a little bit better. Everybody won't get an A, and that's okay. Yeah, I know a lot of people are like, man, I feel like I could have done better if I had a better professor or a better teacher. That's probably true. All right. It's probably both and. So you need to know how to study. You need to know what's expected of you. And those expectations need to be transparent. So that's what we're going to do in this class. All right. If you ever have questions about what's expected of you, hit me up. I'll tell you how to do that later on. Always, always, always ask. And don't just ask amongst yourselves. Ask me. I put the grades in. I give you the assignments. Don't be afraid to ask me. You paid your tuition. Somebody paid for you. You, your mama, the student loan, federal aid. It's paid. I get the same paycheck whether you ask questions or not. It ain't a great paycheck, but I still get it. Ask me. That's what I'm here for. It's not a burden. It's not a bother. Let me know what you need. I will remind you of that throughout the course, and hopefully at some point you believe me. All right? So what you need for the class. There's a textbook, Introductory Chemistry, Scientific Calculator, and Mastering Chemistry. Now I'm going to be real with you. I encourage you to get the textbook, but I understand the funds could be on the squeeze. All right? So if you have to make decisions about what to purchase now versus later, prioritize Mastering Chemistry and a scientific calculator if you do not have one. If you want access to the textbook, you can get electronic access through Mastering Chemistry. Or if you want to, you can go to the bookstore and buy the book and get the access code. I'm not going to tell you don't do that, but you can do well in this class without purchasing the textbook. That's all I'm going to say on that. But you absolutely need to have a scientific calculator. Does not have to be a graphing calculator, but you have to be able to do exponents and some other functions that you can't do with a simple calculator. A scientific calculator you can get for like $20. So hopefully you can get that if you don't have one. You can borrow one from someone who has already taken a math or chemistry course, but make sure that you have a scientific calculator. You absolutely need it. You also need the Mastering Chemistry subscription because that's where all of your homework, most of your homework, and all of your quizzes are. If you don't have that subscription, you can't pass the course. It's a pretty big chunk of your grade. So prioritize getting that Mastering Chemistry subscription as soon as possible. You get 2 weeks free. So you can go ahead and sign up now or when I post the link, because I'm still putting your class together, but that will be done by the end of the day today. You can sign up for it and work for 2 weeks without paying. At the end of that 2 weeks, you will not have access to the homework and quizzes anymore. So make sure that you get that together as soon as possible. Are there any questions so far about what you need material-wise for the class? So I have heard that the access code is like $100-something, which is kind of ridiculous to me. So that's why I say prioritize that, because that and the textbook is kind of strong. Go through the Mastering Chemistry link that I'm going to put on Blackboard, and it can cost a little bit less versus going to the bookstore. But it's It's not exactly cheap. Other questions? I saw most of y'all said no. There was only one question. Okay. So you absolutely need Mastering Chemistry, the subscription. You do not need the textbook to pass the class. I encourage it if you can, but if you can't, it's okay. You're very welcome. So grading allocation. Homework, quizzes, and assignments. Like I said, that's Mastering Chemistry for the most part. There's also what I call chapter check-ins. And we won't have those for every chapter, but those are assignments that I post on Blackboard in the content folder for that particular chapter. And you have to write out your answers and upload your work to Blackboard. And this is kind of I'm checking in, looking at your work, giving you some feedback, particularly for the more difficult chapters that involve a lot more math, so that you can get feedback on what you're doing wrong and I can help you out. So those are small assignments, but still very much a part of your grade. And as you can see, all these assignments together are 40% of your grade. That's a pretty big chunk. The other 40% is exams. Exams will take through Blackboard, Respondus Lockdown. By now, you've probably, if you've had at least one semester down during the Rona, the vid, then you're familiar with Respondus Lockdown. We use that, and some of the questions are not multiple choice. You have to, do some calculations and put in your answer. I grade exams. I make my own exams. So I give you exam review so that you know what to expect. We do practice together, and then the exams are based on everything that we've done as a class together. There's no surprises. And I don't want you to be surprised on the exam because they're 40% of your grade. The first exam is going to be coming up after we complete Chapter 2. So by the end of February, you will have had an exam already and probably going on a second exam. The pace is pretty fast. The final 20% of your grade is the final exam, which is 20%. Again, we'll do all that through Blackboard. No surprises. I give an exam review. We won't have the privilege of the 2 weeks in between the end of classes and finals like we did in the fall. So I will post the final exam review earlier so that you have time to look at it. We'll work in time to go over some of it and answer questions before the final exam. Any questions about where how the grade is broken down? 40%, 40%, 20%. All right. So that's why it's really important you get that Mastering Chemistry, because if you get behind, it is very difficult to catch up. Extra credit. I get asked this every semester. I'm sure somebody's still going to ask me. But extra credit I include on exams, homework, quizzes, the assignments. That's at my discretion. I put up extra credit problems and things to do on Mastering Chemistry that will be available for the entire semester. So you can use that to help you study. If you miss an assignment, let's say you got sick, or you had to work, or you was just struggling that week and you missed some of the assignments, you can use that extra credit to try to make up some points. Okay. I include extra credit questions on exams, on every exam, and sometimes you'll see that on the chapter check-ins and stuff as well. I do not give individual extra credit assignments. So if we get to midterm grades and you see your grade and you're like, oh shoot, and then you ask me for extra credit, I'm going to tell you, well, it's extra credit for everybody. That's all you get. So make sure you take advantage of those opportunities. Any questions so far? I'm going to ask that a million times, so I'm sorry. I want to make sure you understand the extra credit piece. No free lunch. Everybody gets the same extra credit availability. We good on that? Okay, good. Here's the grading policy, all right? So this is a little bit different potentially than your other classes. Chemistry is hard, trying to help y'all out. So, if you just need to pass, this is what you need to get. A 55 will get you there. If you just need to pass, that will get you a D. If that's your goal, that is fine. I ain't gonna judge you. I ain't gonna hold you. If you are in biology or some other major where you need at least a C, then we are looking at this range right here. That'll get you a C minus. If you're trying to do the most, a 90 and above will get you an A. So I just want you to know where you are. Know what your goals are. Know thyself, all right? And I can help you get there. So if you're like, look, chemistry is the devil, math is devil's helper, I'm trying to just make it to the D, we can get you there. Don't be afraid to say, look, I know I ain't gonna get no A. That's fine. So know what your expectations are of yourself and pace yourself accordingly. Prioritize your work accordingly, because I know this is not your only class. You've got this class, a few others. A lot of y'all work, help take care of siblings, help take care of parents. Y'all might have kids. Like, I get it. So just know what you're going for. Let me know how I can help you get there. I encourage everybody to really think about, okay, what can I really do this semester? Given all the things that I have to do, all the things I'm called to be, what's my goal for my grade? And then ask me how to get there. I'm available. So we can, whenever you have questions about your grade, don't be shy. You can ask me about it in office hours. You can send me a message, whatever you want to do. But I post grades regularly. I try to grade things and give you feedback so you know where you are. Expectations for this course. I expect you to watch the recorded lectures and take notes. It may not happen before class, and I know that, especially once we really get into the semester and you've got an exam to prepare for, you've got homework to do, you ain't watching a video. So I tailor the live lectures accordingly to say, okay, these are the things that y'all will probably struggle on if we don't do some practice in class. I'll make sure to mention this. Make sure you take notes specifically on that. We didn't cover this thing real thorough because it's not that big of a deal, but take notes on it in the recorded lecture. So I help you know what's important for the live lecture and what to focus on for the pre-recorded lecture on YouTube. So I expect you to watch those videos. I also expect you to participate in live lectures. So when I ask even a yes or no question, it's not rhetorical. I want an answer. We good? We not good? If you're not good, speak up. You paid your tuition. You have a seat here. So if you need help, that's okay. If you're not comfortable with saying you need help in front of everybody, send me a private chat message. Stay after class or say, Dr. Hefner, can I talk to you for a minute after class? Absolutely. But participate. We'll be doing practice questions at the end of this, and actually really throughout when we start the actual material. Give it a try in your notebook. Or if you're looking at it like, nope, you can write that too, like, I don't get it. Thought I got it? No. That's participation. And believe me, it'll help the time go a little bit faster, and it'll really help you in your work. So please, please, please participate. Course messages. That's in Blackboard. I'll show you how to get there and how to send a course message if you haven't done that before. But use course messages, office hours, all the ways to communicate with me and get help as you need it. So my office hours are going to be Tuesdays from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. So pretty much right after this class. I'm not going to have them this week. If you need something, certainly stay after class and let me know. But we'll start office hours next week, 11 to 1 p.m. I'll also do by appointment. So if you have a class, if you have to work, anything like that, you can send me a message through course messages, or you can talk to me right after class or something like that and say, hey, can I make an appointment with you because Tuesdays don't work? That's fine too. But you need to give me at least 24 hours notice. I have a family. I have other things that I need to do as well. So you can't send me a course message on Friday at 3 p.m. saying, hey, can you? Because no, I can't. And I won't. I'm going to like you guys a lot. I'm sure I will. But I like my family more. And I'm just going to be honest. That's not going to happen. So you need to give me time so we can come up with a date and a time that works for both of us. And I can really be available to you to help. The final expectation is that you're going to complete your assignments and exams and everything on time and with integrity. And what I mean by that is, don't come to me for every week saying, can I have a little bit more time? I didn't know how to access. No, we're grown. I will help you. Everybody gets one chance of grace. So if you do forget something or you need a little bit of an extension or something, I'm human. Come to me, we'll talk about it. But if that's what you're asking me week over week over week, that's a problem. Complete your assignments with integrity. I'm not the biggest fan of Respondus Lockdown. I'll be honest. We will use it, but there are other assignments where I'll just say, hey, this is a take-home exam or this is a take-home quiz. Do it on your own. It's take-home. You get all your notes. Just make sure it's your own work. When you do your chapter check-ins, feel free to work together. Work together virtually, or if you have, someone that's in Chem 103 that's in your little personal bubble that you hang with, do it together. That's fine. But write out your own work. Don't just be like in the group chat like, all right, this is what we're writing for number 2. No. I encourage you to work together, study together, talk with each other, exchange phone numbers, meet somebody new in the class. Absolutely. But when it comes to your own work, make sure it's your own. That's all I ask. Any questions about what you're expected to do in this course? Because I just talked a lot. Now it's your turn. Talk to me. Okay. It seems like we're all on the same page. So let's go over a few key features of Blackboard. And then once we get through that, we'll take a short break and then we'll jump into the material. So if you've used Blackboard before, this is going to be a review. I apologize. But here's some key features that I want to point out. Let me change colors. The first one that I'm going to point out is the syllabus. It's already uploaded. It's a PDF. If I make any changes, I will tell you about it first, either in class or through a course announcement. And then I will post a revised version of the syllabus that reflects the changes. Chances are there's not going to be any changes that big to cause me to make a change to the syllabus. But speaking of the syllabus, there's going to be a syllabus quiz. It's going to be counted as part of your exams. It'll be only worth 50 points though. Feel free to use the syllabus on this quiz, but the goal is for you to go through the syllabus and actually be familiar with when things are due and the expectations of the course, how to communicate with me, that kind of thing. So it's not a memorize the syllabus, it's a be familiar with it, know what you're required to do, know what materials you need, that kind of thing. And if you do that, you get some points added to your exam grade, okay? So that's not due this coming week, but the week after. We'll talk about it. Course content. That is the meat of the course. I post a folder for each chapter. And right now, there's just the chapter for the prerequisite science skills, which we're going to go over. This is also where exams and exam reviews are posted. Each exam will have a folder. So exam 1 will have a folder. It will have an equation sheet and any other information that you need or are, anything that you're allowed to have, like you can print it out. It will be posted there. See, there we go. Yes, do the group me, okay? Do it. Everyone that participates in that will do better than they would have done on their own. Every year, every semester, somebody gets that started. I'm glad y'all are getting it started early because you'll need it. You can work on mastering chemistry together. You can work on exam reviews together. All that good stuff. Put your minds together. It'll make it a lot easier, okay? So good on y'all. All right, course content. Exams and exam reviews are posted there. You'll see the folder. When it's gone, it's gone. So you don't have access to the exams forever. I'll tell you when I post things too. So it's good to check it, but I'll tell you. Inside of each of those folders for the chapter, you'll have the recorded lecture, and the notes, the annotated notes. So what you see on the screen, this is going to be saved to PowerPoint on my computer. I make a PDF and I post it. It's the same thing for the recorded videos. So you get the live lecture, the link to YouTube, and the notes. You get practice problems, which are not for credit. They're just for your own benefit. So if you want to do the practice problems because you're like, don't get it, go ahead and do it, and you can ask me about them. And if there is a chapter check-in due, it will also be posted in that folder. But when the due date passes, so you get, with the chapter check-ins, you get an extra week to hand it in. You lose 7% of the grade, 7% of the points, but you can turn it in up to a week late and still get credit. After that, it's gone forever. Because I'm not trying to be at the end of the semester grading the chapter check-in from chapter 2. It's just not going to happen. Okay. Announcements. This is the primary way I communicate with you. It reaches everybody. So I'll tell you, hey, live video is posted along with the notes. Or exam 1 is available. Exam 1 is graded. Class will start 15 minutes late today. Because, I have kids. Things happen. So always, always, always look at your announcements. they're sent as emails to. Course messages is how we communicate individually. You can send me a course message and I'll show you how to do that. If you submitted a homework or there's something wrong with the document you've submitted, I will send you a message through course messages. I'll also put feedback along with the assignment so you can see it both places. So if you get a 0 for something, chances are it's the wrong format and I need you to send it to me or re-upload it or something like that. So check those. Collaborate, that's what we use for class. It's there. Since you're here, you already know how to use it. You can check your grades, which I'm sure you will do. Something that's missing here, but will not be missing for long, you'll also get Mastering Chemistry. There's an R there. So Mastering Chemistry will be in the course tools. The link is not available to you right now because I'm still putting your class together, but it will be available by the end of the day today. Any questions? We're going to go in detail for a couple of these sections, but are there any questions about the features that we're going to be using on Blackboard? Thank you so much for participating. You don't even understand. Because it's just me sitting here talking, and it's just like, is anybody listening? Y'all could just be there, me on mute, watching a movie. You could get back into bed. You could go take a shower. Like, let's just be real. This is a real different space. It's very different from the in-person classes. So your feedback is very helpful to me. It makes the class better. So thank you so much. I know it's 8 o'clock. It's strong for me too. So sending course messages. I want to make sure everyone knows how to do this. So you click on course messages, and this is from the web. I don't use the Blackboard app. So if you use the app, I can't help you. But if you use your computer, you log on to Blackboard, you go to course messages, you click on that under communication, and it'll send you to a page that looks like this. This isn't the whole page. When you want to send me a message, you click on create message up here. Your inbox obviously has all the correspondence that you have, which, you can send messages to anyone, not just me. And you can, of course, see the messages that you have sent. When you click on create message, it's going to send you to this page. You see recipients at the top, and then you've got 3 options: the to, the CC, which is the carbon copy, and BCC, which is blind carbon copy. Click on this to. You have to click on that so that the possible recipients will show up. When you click on that to, appreciate you, I see you in the chat, you have to choose a recipient and then press this button here to add that recipient. So this is how you add me. You search for me, Aaliyah Hefner. That's my name. And then once you add me, write your message and send it. So does everybody understand how to use course messages? This is going to be posted. So make sure you know how to do this. You can always go back to it if you need to. All right. And then just quickly, course content, which again is here under course information. You're going to see a folder for each chapter that we do. So prerequisite science skills is where we're starting. Then you'll see one for chapter 2, 3, 4, so on. And we are going all the way up to chapter 10. So this is a very fast-paced course. We're doing a chapter a week for the most part. We're splitting up chapters 2, 8, 9, and 10. Everything else we're doing in about a week, which is a lot of material. So stay up to date. And announcements. If you didn't, see the announcement, or you need to go back and check information in an announcement, you can click on the announcements link and it will bring you to the page where all of the announcements that I've sent are posted. The top one being the newest, the very bottom one being the oldest. So you can always scroll through here. When I post the link for how to reach me for office hours and when office hours are, I will post that and pin it above. So you can always click on the announcements and you can see the link and the times that I'm available right there. This is the chance for you to ask any questions you have. If you don't have any questions about the course and how it's going to be run, what's expected of you, then we'll take a short break. So let me know. Questions, or are you ready for break? All right. So let's take a break. You don't have to log off necessarily, but you can if you want to. And we will take a 15-minute break. We'll say it's 8:40 now. So we will break until 8:55. Then we'll jump in. I'll make sure there's no other questions about the syllabus and all that stuff. And then we'll move on into the first chapter of real material. So I will see you back at 8:55. If you ask me questions, is the book only available on Pearson? Online, yes. You can always go to Amazon or somewhere and buy it used. And since I don't assign problems from the textbook, you can also get an older edition if you just want to have a textbook to hold and love and read. Yeah, it looks like someone is working on the group me. So y'all get connected and we'll all come back together at 8:55. All right, everybody, it is 8:55. If you have any questions about what we went over with the course overview, this is a good time. Otherwise, we will head straight into the material for this week. I told you it's a fast-paced class, so there is no just go over the syllabus and then everybody goes home. We have to go over some material today too. And if you haven't had a chance to watch the video already, that's okay. But make sure that you do, because I am skipping some things. Are we ready to start? Then let's get started. So this chapter is really about some of the skills you'll need and the basic understanding you'll need for doing math in this course. We'll touch on some other topics too, like what measurements are and things like that, but it's really about math. So again, if math does not make you happy, if you don't feel very strong in math, that's okay. There's tutoring, there's office hours, all sorts of resources to help. We're going to start by talking about the types of measurements that you can take. And measurements, it's just a number that you can get from an instrument. So let's say that you're measuring length, for instance. That means you're using a ruler. Or if you're getting a mass, that means you're using a scale, right? The measurements that we're talking about in this class, we're talking about length, mass, and volume. There are other types of measurements. If you Google types of measurements, the list will be much longer. But if I ask you for the 3 types of measurements, I'm talking about the ones for this class on this slide: length, mass, and volume. And we've got examples of each: centimeter for length, the gram for mass, and the milliliter for volume. Those are just examples. Typically speaking, we'll use the metric system. In Chapter 2, we will bring up some of the imperial system, which is what we use here in the US. But by and large, we're going to use the metric system. So you'll get familiar with it if you're not familiar with it already. And each measurement that you record, say from a scale or a ruler, has a certain number of digits that you can trust. Those are significant digits. I go over kind of certainty versus uncertainty in the recorded video. Make sure that you grasp that concept because we're not going over it specifically. It's important, but not as important. Okay. What is important, though, is that you understand significant digits, which I will call Sig Figs. They used to be called significant figures when I was in school, and Sig Figs is a lot easier to say than significant digits. So I'm going to say Sig Figs, and that's what I mean. Each number that's properly recorded as a measurement is each number is a significant figure, okay? So let's say that you were measuring a liquid and you were using a graduated cylinder. And you had 10.5 milliliters of a liquid. Each one of those numbers, the 1, the 0, and the 5, are a significant digit. Within that measurement, the last digit is the uncertain digit. So I'm going to rewrite this again. The 5 is the uncertain digit. That's the one you guesstimate on. So you know for sure that you've got 10 milliliters, right? But now that 0.5, you're reading between the lines. I'll do a poor drawing of a graduated cylinder. And there's always tick marks. If you have some fluid, you need to read that level. That's between 2 of those tick marks. So if this is 10 milliliters and this is 11 milliliters, you're going to say, okay, I know for sure I've got 10. Now I'm going to guess this last digit, the decimal, and let's call it 0.5. That's why that 0.5 is the uncertain digit, okay? So every measurement has an uncertain digit. Is everybody clear on that? Let me know if you need me to repeat it. Okay. Oh, I got one repeat. So I'll repeat it one more time. With a measurement, you've got significant digits. They're all important. However, the final digit is also known as the uncertain digit, okay? Because it's the one that we're guesstimating on. And if we look at my graduated cylinder here, we've got these marks, these tick marks that tell us a certain number of milliliters. So if this first tick mark is 10 milliliters and the next one is 11, I can tell you for sure when I have 10 milliliters of liquid in this graduated cylinder. But I can use my eye to estimate one more digit beyond the 10. So that would put me at the 10th place. That digit that you estimate is the uncertain digit. And every measurement has one more digit than you can reliably with certainty read. So if I had a ruler and I just had tick marks for the inches, and I had something that I had to measure, I can tell you for sure, I can tell you for sure that it's an inch. It's longer than an inch. The decimal point, though, I'm going to have to guess. And well, if I say this is about halfway, then maybe that's 1.7 inches. That 0.7 is the uncertain digit. All right. So that's the repeat. If you still don't get it, you can let me know and we can go over it later. So this example I go over in the recorded lecture, but we're also going to go over it here just so that I can give you a little bit more practice. So if you've seen this already and you know the answer, that's cool. If you haven't, that's cool. We've got a ruler. We've got two rulers, and we're trying to measure a rectangular solid. Which ruler, A or B, would you rather use to measure something, A or B? Which one's going to give you more precise measurements, something that you feel more comfortable with? B. B is going to give you more information, okay? So when we're talking about this concept of uncertainty, what we're talking about is which one of these has the least information on it. Out of these two, A is going to be the most uncertain. It's going to give you the most uncertain measurement because all you can see is the centimeters. There's no tick marks in between for the millimeters. So you can say, okay, it's 4 centimeters, but after that, you're guessing. With ruler B, I can tell you it's 4.2, and then I can guess another digit after that. So for A, I'd maybe guess 4.3. So the 4 we know for certain. The 0.3 is the uncertain digit. So you always include that uncertain digit with the measurement. For ruler B, I've got these tick marks in between the 4 and the 5. So I can tell you 4.2 with certainty. And then I'll say 4.25, where the 5 is my uncertain digit. So is that distinction clear? We can only go one more place past what we see with regards to length and volume. With mass, it's a scale, so you're not guessing that, all right? Okay. As long as that concept makes sense to you, then we're good. The goal of the live lectures is to take the recorded lecture and make it make a little bit more sense than it did before. So we'll do some practice. I'll ask you some questions. We'll revisit things. You can ask questions. And then hopefully between those two things, you'll understand it and be able to get the homework. Now, there still may be some questions on the homework. Some of those questions are challenging and require you to synthesize information. But by and large, you should be able to complete the homework with ease. All right. So that's uncertainty, uncertain digits, and the concept of significant digits all in one. We'll talk a little bit about the measurement types and the instruments that you can use for those. This isn't a real big thing for you to memorize. It's probably something you already know. So mass, we're looking at the measure of the amount of matter something has. You use a balance, which is not affected by gravity. So if you've taken any kind of chemistry class, you've probably seen something that looks like that, which is an analytical scale. And it gives you several decimal places. You use that to measure your reagents. Volume, it tells you the amount of space that's occupied by matter. If you're in the chemistry lab, you'll see graduated cylinders, syringes, burettes, all kinds of things. So if you end up taking 106, 107, or any other chemistry courses with a lab related to it, you will definitely encounter some of these instruments. Now we're going to get to determining Sig Figs. So remember, significant digits, same thing as Sig Figs. We need to be able to look at a measurement and count how many significant figures there are in that measurement. I'll do the first one with you and for you, and then I want you to try it on your own. So, we've got this measurement. Oh, you're good. It's okay. 0.809 grams. When we're counting Sig Figs, you want to count the number of digits you have from left to right, starting with the first non-zero digit. So we're looking for anything other than a 0. Let me change colors here. Non-zero digit means that we're starting here. This is our first significant figure. This 0, we don't care about it. That's a placeholder. So we don't count it. Starting with the 8, we're going to just count how many digits there are. 1, 2, 3. Now there are rules about zeros, and I just said that the first 0 is a placeholder 0. But then I counted this 0 that's in between the 8 and the 9. Zeros that are in between two non-zero digits are always going to be significant. So let me know if you're with me. Does this make sense so far? All right. Now we're going to talk about placeholder zeros a little bit, and then I'll let you do these next 2 examples. We're going to look at part B here for the placeholder zeros. These are the ones that you do not count, okay? That 0 and 0.11, just like in our first example, that's a placeholder. We don't count it. When you see a 0 come directly after the decimal point, that's also not counted. It's a placeholder because these 2 numbers, those are different. This second 0 is still a placeholder. And finally, the 0 at the end of a measurement, if there is no decimal place or decimal point, is also a placeholder 0. And the way I like to explain that, if I told you I was going to give you $110 and then I gave you 11, would you be mad? Yes, you'd be mad. Absolutely, you'd be mad. You'd be like, so when does your next check come? Because you're going to fill in the rest, right? So if you know that those two values are different when it comes to somebody giving you money, then on an exam or an assignment, you should know that those two numbers are different. So when we're doing rounding and significant digits, which is coming, don't write 11 for 110. Think about money. If I hand you $11 and said 110, this is equivalent. You would be like, go back to school, take back her PhD. So remember that. Now, we're going to walk through this second example together. We've got 1.400 milliliters. Starting with the first non-zero digit, let's figure out how many significant figures there are in this measurement. So we're starting with the 1. Yeah, so these zeros that come after the 4, we count these. But in 110, in the example I gave, there's no decimal here. But when you see a decimal, all the zeros at the end count as significant figures. So with that said, how many significant figures do we have in 1.400 milliliters? We've got 4 Sig Figs. So the zeros at the end of a decimal are significant. Yes. So it means that we had the opportunity to read these numbers, but it's 0. It's like when we had our graduated cylinder example, it would be like, and I can go back to that. So if I read exactly 10 milliliters here, my measurement would actually be 10.0 milliliters. Because I can read that tenths place. It's just 0. That's what that means. So 1.400 milliliters means I can read these numbers. They just happen to be 0. So is that distinction clear? The zeros are going to get you. I'm telling you that right now. Them placeholder zeros, they come for you. Don't let them, but they're going to try. So let's do this last one. How many significant figures are in 10 centimeters? 1, 0. There's 1. Because that 0 at the end is a placeholder. Good. So there will be more practice for this with your first homework assignment. And usually what I do is So next week's class, we'll have a do now where there's, 2 or 3 problems that you can do in the beginning of class that we'll go over quickly just to make sure we're still on the same page and your brain didn't dump out all the stuff we talked about the week before. Okay? So, we'll have plenty of practice. As you're doing homework, you can send messages. Yes, if I wrote this 10 like this, then that would be 2 significant figures. There's another way to represent that 10 centimeters with 2 significant figures that we're going to talk about in just a minute. But yes, with the decimal, it would absolutely be that. We talked about significant digits and measurements. We also need to talk about exact numbers. We don't count the number of Sig Figs in exact numbers. Generally speaking, exact numbers, you can count them. So the example here is there's 7 quarters here in the right. There are no significant figures for that. We know for certainty how many there are because we can count them. We can see them. So understanding the difference between a measurement and an exact number is going to be key here. So I'm going to write up a few numbers, and I want you to tell me whether it's a measurement or it's an exact number. Okay. So the first one, 805 light years, which light years are distance, just in case you didn't know. Is this a measurement or is it an exact number? You could put M or E in the chat. It's a measurement. It's a distance. 25 light bulbs. Measurement or exact number? It's exact. Silly example, but you get it. 8.7 centimeters. Measurement or exact number? It's a measurement. Just like that, you're chemists already, okay? So keep that in mind. Again, you'll see it on the homework. You'll also see it on your first exam. Now we're going to get back to talking about significant figures. We talked about how to read a ruler or something, or a graduated cylinder, and how we get the correct number of significant figures for a measurement. We talked about looking at a measurement and counting how many significant figures there are. Now we need to talk about rounding. So there are several rules for rounding. You've probably encountered them in your math class, but just to make sure that we're all on the same page, let's do some examples as we go through these rules. When we're looking at significant figures and we need to round, you look at the first non-significant digit. Let's say that I have 82.3 milliliters, and I have to round to 2 decimal places. To 2 significant digits. Two significant figures, means that I'm keeping the 8 and I'm keeping the 2. I need to figure out if I'm going to increase that 2 by 1 or if I'm just going to leave it as it is. I look at the number directly next to it, which is the 3. If that number is less than 5, then I'm just going to drop it. It's less than 5, it's a 3, so I'm going to drop it. So 82.3 rounded to 2 significant figures is 82 milliliters. Questions about that? Good. The next rule, and this time we're going to use 82.7 milliliters as our example. And we still have to round to 2 Sig Figs. If the number you're looking to, if you need 2 Sig Figs here, you're looking at that digit next to the one you need to round. If it's 5 or greater, you're going to increase your last significant digit by 1 and drop everything else. So if I need 2 Sig Figs here, and I've got 82.7, what am I going to record as my measurement with 2 significant figures? You can put it in the chat. 82.7. Yeah, it becomes 83. Now, throughout the whole course, you will see units, milliliters, grams, meters. Always make sure to include your units in your answer. Also include units in your work when you're doing your math problems, because it will help keep you organized and it'll help keep you on track. I also take off points if you don't have proper units, so that is also incentive. So get into the practice of doing that. Sometimes in the chat, it's not always easy to put in the units, but if you try to, when you answer questions, it'll get you in the habit. The last rule, if a calculation has several multiplication or division operations, just keep all of those digits in the calculator and round at the end. Okay, so that's all that's saying. We good on the rules for rounding numbers? Good. Now we're going to do a little bit of practice. These placeholder zeros are going to come back. I want you to round this measurement to 2 significant figures, 6,215 kilograms. You can write it in the chat. 2 significant figures. How do you write that? Yeah, units. Units matter. So 6,200 kilograms. That's what it would be. These 2 zeros are placeholders. You have to add zeros because 62 versus 6,200, 2 very different numbers. Again, if I said, look, this stimulus check that you're going to get from the government, 6,200, and then you got $62 placed in your hand, if you didn't punch me out, you would at least have some special words for me that would indicate 62 is not the same. So when you're rounding, make sure you remember this ridiculous example and add the placeholder zeros. Okay. We have to take 6,215 kilograms and report it as 2 significant digits. If we're counting sig figs, that means the 6 is 1, the 2, that's the second one. Everything else has got to go. We're looking to round here. The 1 tells us, yeah, that we're going to just drop everything, but you can't say 62. All right? Good. Yeah, whenever you're confused, just let me know. Please remember to add placeholder zeros as needed when you are rounding. I see this error pretty frequently, and it's one of those, oh man, why didn't I? Always double check your work. Before we move on to that, let's make sure, are we all good on adding placeholder zeros, rounding, because we're going to be switching gears a little bit to talking about adding and subtracting. The last rule was just saying, if you're doing a lot of multiplying and dividing, just do all of that in your calculator and then round your answer at the end. So don't round after each time you multiply or divide, but do all of that first, then round at the very end. Okay. Now we're going to talk about adding and subtracting and then multiplying and dividing measurements. When you're adding or subtracting measurements, the answer is limited by the value with the most uncertainty. And what that means is the fewest place values or decimal places. So I have this example, which is one that I did in the video. I'm going to go through and say how many significant figures there are in each of these. But then I'm also going to show you which number is the most uncertain. So this top number has 4 sig figs. The one underneath has 2. I'll sometimes abbreviate sig figs SF. And the final number has 3. However, when it comes to certainty, we're looking at how many decimal places do we have. And if none of the numbers have decimal places, then we're looking at the number of place values, hundreds, tens, ones, like what do we have? Here we've got some decimal places. This top number only has to the 10th place. So this is the most uncertain measurement. Everything else we can get to the hundredths or the thousandths. That's pretty accurate. We can get some real precision there. Now I know we're not going to add things by hand in class because we just don't do that anymore. But when you use your calculator, you need to know how to round appropriately. You saw me draw this dotted line here. That's my reminder that after I'm done, I need to round and retain just this last number here. Everything else has to go. If you have a calculator, take a second and add up these 3 numbers and tell me what you get in the chat. So that's what your calculator is going to tell you, right? The 115.631. It's not going to tell you units. It's not going to tell you significant figures. Your calculator will only tell you what you want to hear. It will whisper sweet nothings to you. And that's because the calculator will do whatever calculation you put into it. It can't check to make sure that you put in the number right or anything like that. Knowing that we have to round using and report the number of digits that corresponds to the answer with the number with the least decimal places, we have to cut off our number at the tenths place. We're looking at the 3 to say, is it 5 or greater, or is it less than 5? It's less than 5, so we're going to drop everything after the 6. And I see somebody got it in the chat. That's how you do addition. It's the same rules for subtraction. Do we want to do another example, or are we ready to move on to multiplying and dividing? Okay. One more. There's our second example. Oh, I have another question. How is 114.3 the most uncertain? Because it has the fewest decimal places. It's only got the tenths place. The other numbers have, I can measure the hundreds, the tens, the ones, but I can also measure the tenths and the hundredths. And the third number, I can measure the thousandths. So I can measure many more places using whatever instrument for these other two measurements than I can in the top one. Does that make sense? Good. So let's do this second example here, where we've got two volumes that we're subtracting. You can put your final answer in the chat where you round. So if you put it into your calculator, it will tell you 82.25. But we know that's not the end all be all. We've got to round because we've only got the tenths place for our second measurement. We got to round this 2, and next to it is a 5. So we'll increase it to a 3. So several of you got that. If you didn't get that answer and you are confused about it, let me know after class. If you just didn't put it in or you're not following along anymore, I get it. It's a long time. But make sure you can do this. So good on y'all. You got it. Now we'll move on to multiplying and dividing. So I already put the calculator answers here for these, and we'll just practice on the rounding and units. So for multiplying and dividing, what we care about is the number of significant figures. How many significant figures are in 7.28? And what about 4.6? So if we were to multiply these two together and report an answer, our answer needs to have two significant figures. That's how it works with multiplying and dividing. When we're multiplying and dividing measurements, we're also doing the same operation with our units. If I told you 2 times 2 is equal to 2 squared, you'd be like, yeah, I get that. It's the same thing with our units. Centimeters times centimeters is centimeters squared. So this number right here, this 33.488, that's from the calculator, and it's what I call a naked number. Doesn't have any units. It's winter. Even though it's North Carolina, it's still kind of cold. Don't put these numbers out here naked. They need a unit. Cover them up. Give them a jacket, scarf, hat, maybe some gloves on a particularly cold day. At 8 o'clock, it's cold. Don't give me naked numbers. The numbers are sad. And I know this is a little bit ridiculous. But in all seriousness, give me units. 1, you'll lose points. But 2, if you don't give me units, I don't know what the number means. Numbers are not helpful unless they have units. And in this case, we're multiplying centimeters times centimeters. So our units are centimeters squared. But we still need to deal with the rounding. If we need to have 2 significant figures in our answer for multiplying 7.28 centimeters times 4.6 centimeters, what is my answer going to be with 2 sig figs? So I see 33.5 and I see 33. How many significant figures are in 33.5? There's 3 of them here. We only need 2 sig figs. So our answer for this should be 33 centimeters squared. Okay. So we'll go over it again. We'll talk it through again. And let me choose a different color so you can see anything additional that I write. Okay. We multiplied 7.28 times 4.6 with our calculator, and we got this answer, 33.488. These 2 measurements, they're measurements of length, have a different number of significant figures. 7.28, we said, has 3 significant figures. 4.6 has 2. When we're multiplying or dividing, the answer we report is limited by the value with the fewest significant figures. One of our measurements has 2 significant figures. That means when we report our final answer, the final answer has to have 2 sig figs. The calculator tells you 33.488. We're keeping the 3. We're keeping the 3. We have to get rid of everything else. So we look at the 4 to see whether we round the 3 up or keep it the same. 4 is less than 5, so we drop everything off and report 33. Now we deal with our units. When you're multiplying and dividing, you're doing the same thing to your units. Just like 2 times 2 is the same as 2 squared, centimeters times centimeters is centimeters squared. So that's what our units are. For those who were confused, does this help? Okay. Now we're going to do division. Same numbers, but our units If I divide centimeters by centimeters, my units disappear. So in this answer, I don't have units, and that's on purpose because they cancel each other out. So if you remember doing algebra where you had to simplify an expression and you had, say, 2x over x, right? Well, you can get rid of one of those x's and be left with x. Here, centimeters divided by centimeters, you're getting rid of centimeters altogether. If that concept doesn't make sense to you in terms of solving equations, let me know either in the chat or right after class, because we don't have time to go into that in super great detail here. But if you need help with evaluating units, we can do that, because you will have to do it for your homework. We can do more examples in class too, maybe one or two more. So with that said, how many significant figures do we need to report in our answer for this second problem, where we're dividing 7.28 by 4.6? Right. So what's our answer with two significant figures? $1.6. Good. Now I'm going to give you the same thing. Change colors. And this is just to give you an example of how the units can change. Let's say that we had these same numbers, so 7.28 divided by 4.6, but the units are centimeters and seconds. What do you think the units will be? You've got the 1.6. Exactly. Centimeters per second. You can't cancel anything out. So pay attention to the units when you're doing multiplying and dividing, particularly on the homework. So you know how many significant figures an answer has to have based on whether you're multiplying and dividing versus addition and subtraction. The rules are different. Multiplying and dividing, we care about the number of significant figures in each measurement. With adding and subtracting, we care about decimal places. And that's just something that you have to practice. I'm going to post practice problems. I already have them ready. I would suggest that you look over those and do them and send me a message. I normally post answer keys, but for the first 1 to 2 chapters, I don't. And that's on purpose. Not because I'm trying to be mean, but because I want you to come to me and ask questions. All right. So we're going to move on. If you still have some question marks, that's okay. Do some practice problems, and we have some practice coming up at the end too. So we did adding and subtracting, we did multiplying and dividing. But most of the time, you're going to be doing more than one operation, which means you're going to have to add some things and then divide something or multiply. In that scenario, we just care about significant figures. So you identify the measurement in the given problem with the fewest sig figs. You do all your calculations to solve the problem, and then you report your answer with the same number of sig figs as the most uncertain measurement, right? So the fewest sig figs. This is pretty much the rules for multiplying and dividing. Okay, that's what we're doing for whole problems. So if I gave you this problem at the bottom, I want you to first go through and tell me how many significant figures are in each measurement. So for this number of grams, 4.599, how many significant figures do we have? 4. Now why don't you give me the next two, the 12.7 and the 25. How many sig figs do we have for each of those? We've got 3 sig figs, and then we've got 2 sig figs. So in this question, we're dividing and we're multiplying. Now, it just so happens that they have the same rules anyway, but we're going to do all of these operations and then round at the end. How many significant figures should our answer have at the end? It should have 2 significant figures. So go ahead and put this into your calculator and then tell me what your answer is. So for this, we know how many significant figures because we're going through looking at all of our measurements, the 4.599, 12.7, and 25, figuring out how many significant figures they have, and then the fewest number of significant figures, that's what we use to report our answer. So put this in your calculator and tell me what your answer is. Don't forget units. Your calculator is going to tell you some long number, okay? That's your calculator answer. We need 2 significant figures. So that's going to be 9.1. Remember, the 9 is the first significant figure. This 0 is the second significant figure. And then we look to the number next to the 0 to round. Now we've got to look at our units. We've got grams divided by liters times liters. These liters are going to cancel because you've got 1 on the top and 1 on the bottom. That's going to leave you with grams. Talk to me about that. How do we feel about that? Does it make sense and you just need to practice? Or are you like, let's do that again? Okay. Yeah, it's a little bit tricky. But remember, the same thing you're doing with the units, we're also doing with the numbers. So I'll give you another problem just with units. So I'm going to write it up here. So we've got centimeters squared over liters multiplied by liters over seconds. Take a second, think about what your units are going to be. And then to show me squared, you can use the caret symbol. And you're going to cancel out these 2 liters because you have one on the top and one on the bottom. That's the only time that you can cancel. And you're left with centimeters squared over seconds. There's no squared there, just seconds. Do we need one more example or are we good? Okay. Last concept, scientific notation, where you see a number that's written like 5.79 times 10 to the third meters, something like that. How many, by show of hands or just saying me, how many of you have seen something written like this before? Okay, great. So you can lower your hand. Thank you for letting me know. So this shouldn't be foreign to a lot of you. In science, we usually have really, really big numbers or super teeny tiny numbers. And ain't nobody trying to write all those zeros because that's just time consuming and it's much easier to make mistakes. So instead, we use scientific notation. And that way, we can know right away what the significant digits are and what the actual number is. Is it really big? Is it really small? How many zeros? The form that it's in is what you see here. All these D's, that's the significant digits in your number. This is called the coefficient. In our example, the 5.79 times 10 to the third, that's the 5.79. Then you have times 10 to the n. That's your power of 10. It tells you how many zeros, and whether it's a number that is bigger, that's 1 or bigger, or if it's smaller than 1. The 10 to the third, that's our power of 10. If I were to write this number as a standard number or ordinary number, regular number, those are all ways to say it, I would take this 5.79 and I would move my decimal point 3 places to the right. 1, 2, 3. I have to add a placeholder 0 here for a final answer of 5,790 meters. That's going from scientific notation to a regular number. This 3 here is positive. So that means that your number is 1 or greater. We're going to stop here and let me know if this makes sense, because we went over 2 different topics here. What scientific notation is, and then how to go from scientific notation to a regular number. Yeah, we'll do one more to go from scientific notation to a regular number, and then we'll learn how to go from a regular number to scientific notation. All right. This time we're going to do one that has a power of 10 that is negative. Okay. This time we've got to the -3 meters. This means that our number is going to be less than 1. Yeah. So when we take our number 5.79, I'm going to move the decimal point to the left 1, 2, 3. And I have to add 2 placeholder zeros. Now I'm going to give you one to do on your own to see if it makes sense to you. I want you to write 8.5 times 10 to the 5th meters per second as an ordinary number. You can put it in the chat. We take that 8.5. The 5 is positive, so the number is greater than 0, removing the decimal to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we're adding zeros. Okay, so you should have 4 zeros at the end. That is taking a number in scientific notation and writing it as an ordinary number. Now we're going to move on. Oh, first I'm going to talk about putting it in your calculator. Forgot about that. Then we're going to move on to taking an ordinary number and writing it in scientific notation. So this is one of the reasons why you need to have a scientific calculator, because you have to use exponents. Oftentimes your calculator is going to have the EXP button. So this is just on Windows, right? You're probably going to be using something other than your computer for your calculator. It will have an EXP or an EE button to express powers of 10. If you need help with that, the best thing you can do is go to Google, because each calculator can be a little bit different. Outside of that, if you let me know what calculator you have, send me a picture of your calculator, then I may be able to help you, but no guarantees. I've encountered a lot of calculators, but there may still be 1 or 2 that trip me up. So your best bet is to go to Google, find the manual for that calculator, and look up how to do whatever you need to do. When you see this E plus 8, that means that you have scientific notation. The E is the same thing as times 10, and then the plus 8 or the minus whatever tells you the power. So look for, all calculators may display it a little bit differently, but just be sure that you know how your calculator displays that. And if you don't have a calculator right now, that's fine. But whatever one you use, try to use the same one. So if you're borrowing it from somebody, make sure you can hang on to it for the whole semester, because you're going to get used to doing things on that calculator. Now we'll talk about going the opposite way. We have a regular number that's really big or really small, and we want to write it in scientific notation. Let's say that we've got the number 95 million years, and we want to write it in scientific notation. The first thing you want to do is make a coefficient that's going to be at least 1 greater than 10. You're going to look at your significant digits here, which in this case, the 9 and the 5. We're going to place a decimal right after that first significant digit. That's our coefficient. The coefficient has to be less than 10. Now we need to figure out the power of 10. So times 10 to the something. Well, this is a big number. It is 1 or greater. That means that in order to take our decimal place, which remember each number, even if it's not there, there's a decimal at the end of the number. In order to move this decimal all the way up to here, we're moving it to the left. That means we're going to have a positive power of 10. And we count the number of places. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The other way that I like to remember this is if your starting number is 1 or greater, you're going to have a positive power of 10. Now I'm going to give you an example like this to do and see if we get it. So you have 703 million seconds. It's a lot of seconds. How do we write that in scientific notation? I want you to first give me what is the coefficient. It's got to be at least 1, no greater than 10. Has to have all of our significant digits. Right. Our coefficient is going to be 7.03. Is our power of 10, what's our power of 10 going to be? It's got to be positive because our number is bigger than 1. That's 8. So we put it all together, it's 7.03 times 10 to the 8. Now I've got some more examples for us to do, but I just want to run through one example of how to do a negative one. And then we're going to move on and do some practice problems that incorporate all the stuff we've been doing. Let's say we've got a small number. How many significant digits are in this number that I just wrote? Yeah, there's 3 of them, the 650. So everything at the end. Our coefficient is going to be 6.50. So we've taken that decimal point and moved it to the right. That means we're going to have a negative power of 10. I like to remember this by saying that if your starting number is less than 1, you've got a negative power of 10. So what will my power of 10 be for this one? We were ready. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. So that is taking an ordinary number and writing it in scientific notation. Now I've got some practice for you. I'm going to give you a minute to get started. And then you can, as you finish, put your answers in the chat for number 1 and number 2. Then we'll go over it together. So we've got some answers coming in. How many Sig Figs? There are 3. Now writing scientific notation, there's the implied decimal point there. It's not really there. We're not counting all those zeros as significant, but this helps to visualize moving the decimal point. Our coefficient is going to be 1.56. That has all 3 of our significant figures. This is going to have a positive power of 10 because we've got a really big number. So you should get a 1.56 times 10 to the 9th light years. That's the first one. Take another minute, do the second one, and you can put your answer in the chat. Okay. There's a lot of zeros in this one, so there are 3 significant figures. Again, that 0 at the very end is not a placeholder. Yes, it is a very long number. That's why scientific notation exists, because who wants to keep writing this number over and over again? Not me. I'm going to drop a 0, add a 0, fall asleep writing the zeros. It'd be a struggle. So we're plopping our decimal point. Yes, you include units. Putting our decimal point here between the 4 and the 7. That is our coefficient. Then we count. And it's negative, remember, because we've got a number smaller than 1. So how do we feel about these two? Good, meh, all right, but still need practice. Excellent. We've got more. We did rounding before. And if it's just meh or okay, that's fine. We're just getting started. So you may not get every concept right away. But as long as you feel like you could walk away and do a little practice, or you have a couple of more questions that you can ask, but you don't feel completely lost, then we've done some good work. Now for these next two problems, I want you to round and report to 3 significant figures. And go ahead and put your answers in the chat as you get them. And I'll go over it in another maybe 30 seconds. All right. So we need 3 significant figures. We're keeping the 8, the 5, and the 2. Remember, you start counting at the first non-zero number starting at the left, right? So there's 1, 2, 3. This is the 3rd significant figure. We need to report this number using 3 sig figs, but we have 5 places that we need to fill because 852 versus 85,000 some odd, 2 different numbers. Okay. We're going to look at the 3 to see if we round that 2 up or stay the same. We're going to stay the same because that 3 is less than 5. But we have to add 2 placeholder zeros because we have to report 85,200. Remember, those two are not the same. Okay. What about the second one? We need 3 significant figures. Oh, we're supposed to do scientific notation. See, I wrote the question and I forgot myself. So now we need to write this number, 85,200, in scientific notation. The coefficient is going to be 8.52. We're going to have a positive power of 10 because it's 85,000. So that's 1 or greater. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So now let's do the same thing for number 2. We need 3 sig figs and write it in scientific notation. So that's 3 sig figs, 0.907. And now we need to write it in scientific notation. Our coefficient is going to be 9.07. And then we have a number that's smaller than 1, so we know it's going to be negative. And to get that decimal point back to where it was originally, it's just 1. So how we feel about these? So the number tells you how many places you moved, right? So to go from 9.07 to 0.907, you're only moving 1 decimal place. So that's why it's only 1, -1, and not -2. Any other questions on these practice problems or the ones we just did? Okay. So I always end the class with reminders to let you know when things are due, if an exam is coming up, changes to office hours, anything like that. And so, like I said, the Mastering Chemistry will be available. That link will be available by the end of the day. Your first assignments in Mastering Chemistry are due by Sunday, January 31st, by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. After that, you will not get credit for doing the assignment. You get 2 weeks free for Mastering Chemistry. So there's no excuse for, not doing the homework. If you don't have the money right now, you don't have to. You can do homework for 2 weeks. The introduction to Mastering Chemistry just helps you to get familiar with the way that you enter answers and things like that. And then there's the prerequisite science skills, which is based on what we did here as practice, and then some of the things that I talk about in the video. Make sure that you do those 2 assignments. Get off to a good start. We have a Pearson representative. Her name is Erica, and she is holding Zoom office hours for anyone who is interested in getting help with using Mastering Chemistry. I'll put an announcement out today with her office hours and the Zoom link and everything like that. So if you want some help, if you've never used Mastering before, or you just want a refresher, you can attend her office hours and get some help. The other reminder is next week we're starting Chapter 2. Chapter 2 is going to be split up over 2 sessions. The first video will be posted this week for the first half of the chapter, along with your very first chapter check-in assignment and the syllabus overview quiz. So those things will not be due until February, but I'm just giving you a heads up. This is what's coming. There will always be something due for this class, and everything is due on Sundays except for exams. So, yes, everything that is due this coming Sunday is on Mastering Chemistry, and you will have access to that today. I will put out an announcement when your class is up and ready. That's all I have for you. If you don't have any other questions, you're free to go. Otherwise, you can hang out, ask your question. This will be posted on YouTube today, so I'll also post this live lecture and the annotated notes for you. So you guys have a good one. I look forward to getting to know you over the rest of the semester.